Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. Welcome and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Amber Thornton, and I'm a product marketer for Adobe Analytics. I work closely with Adobe's Customer Success Manager group to focus on helping you, our customers, get as much value as possible from your Adobe solution. Today, we are hosting the first part of the Analytics Insider webinar series. In today's session, we will be looking at how you can democratize insights across your organization by curating and sharing WORKSPACE. This live webinar is a listen-only format, but is very much intended to be interactive. Please type your questions into the chat pod at the side of the screen at any time. The team will look to address as many questions as possible after the presentation, and we will follow up with you on any other questions we may not get to immediately. Please note that this session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out to everyone who registered, along with a link to recordings of other webinar sessions we've done in the past. We will also have a closing poll at the end to get feedback on the usefulness of this session, as well as any suggestions you may have for other future webinars. So our presenters today are Mo Lagaswaran, a web analytics and optimization lead at National Bank of Canada, and Jen Lasser, product manager for analytics at Adobe. And now, just to get things started, let me hand it over to the speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. So hey, everybody, this is Jen Lasser. I am a product manager for Adobe Analytics. I've been at Adobe for about 6 years now. I spent the first 5 years in our consulting group, and recently moved into the product management role, all the while working with customers like yourselves to help you get the most out of your tools. And now as a product manager, I work with you guys to figure out what we can be doing to make our tools meet your customer needs. So just a couple things I want to call out before we get into the curating content. So today's webinar is focused on democratization of data through curation, sharing, and permissioning in Adobe Analytics. But there's lots of other analytics topics to be covered in the future webinar series. If you do have questions right now, we have a couple great resources for you. The first is our YouTube channel. We have a lot of videos up here. We put new videos up every month with the newly released items. So you can go here to learn about Analysis Workspace more deeply, calculated metrics, segmentation, any question you might have within our tools. We also have a community forum. You can access this from the top right of Adobe Analytics when you're logged in, or simply go to forums.adobe.com. This is a great place for you to ask questions and interact with fellow colleagues in the Adobe Analytics space. So keep those resources in mind if you have some questions that aren't covered in today's topic. So on to the topic of data democratization. When we think of data democratization, we think of it in terms of these 3 categories here. So the first is curate. It's important before you share out any of your project work to make sure the data set you're sharing is manageable and relatable for your end business users, rather than just kind of giving them a login to Adobe Analytics and letting them figure it out from there. So we'll talk a lot about curation. The next pillar of data democratization is sharing. So once you've curated your project, you want to share it out to others in your organization to help them make more data-driven decisions. And finally, permissioning. Within Adobe Analytics, we offer group and individual user level permissions so that you can vary the access levels that you give to each one of your end business users to ensure that they are successful within the tools and have access to the right data. So let's first talk about curation. Curation is a really effective way to give your end business users a safe space to do their own analysis in, while also giving you, the analysts, the peace of mind that they won't be misinterpreting variables or pulling data that is unrelated to their business needs. Before you even start to curate and you've put a project together, there's a couple things that you can do to make sure the project really stands on its own for the user that's going to be receiving it. The first is very simply just creating custom titles and descriptions for all the visualizations you bring in. We, by default, will put in titles like freeform or line, but you'll see here it's always helpful to call out maybe the KPI that you're showing and the time period, for example. Additionally, you can bring in freeform text boxes, and these are a great freeform space for you to add in anything that you'd like. In these areas, I tend to put things like key findings, recommendations that are coming out of this analysis, and even a glossary sometimes if there are certain terms or calculated metrics that need to be explained to that end business user. So after you've added in some context to your project, the next step is to start curating what is included in the project. So we offer two levels of curation. The first is project curation. This is within WORKSPACE itself. This has been around for over a year or at this point. So when you're in your WORKSPACE project, you can go to the Share menu and click Curate Project Data. We will bring in all the dimensions, metrics, segments, and date ranges that are already included in your project. And then you have the option to add in more dimensions and metrics as well. You're creating a set of variables that you want the end business user to be able to use within the project. The second level of curation is something we just introduced this past fall, and this is curation at the virtual report suite level. So at the virtual report suite level, you can bring over certain variables that you want your end business users to be able to interact with, and then you can apply this virtual report suite to many WORKSPACE projects. Also at the virtual report suite level, you can rename variables while you're curating them. So not only can you limit the number of variables somebody has access to, but you can also rename them to be much more relatable to the group that's receiving the data. So for example, if you wanted to share data out with your mobile app team and you have a global report suite of data that mixes mobile and web and all different data points, you could create a virtual report suite for a certain segment of data and then include only the mobile-related dimensions and metrics that they want to measure success by, and then even go a step further and rename some of those variables. For example, if unique visitors doesn't really speak to them, but app users does, you can make that naming change through this workflow. So both levels of curation that I just mentioned, both project and virtual report suite, will result in a simpler left rail like you see here. So rather than having 5 visible dimensions, metrics, segments, and ranges, it'll be reduced down to just what you've included in the project. So you may be wondering, why would I use virtual report suite or VRS level curation versus project? I think the best way to split these two ideas apart is if you need to consistently provide a curated experience to a group of users, virtual report suite is the way to go. You set it up once and you can apply it to many projects. It also has that added benefit of allowing you to provide custom names by each VRS. Project curation is also still very helpful though. It's really easy to curate, especially if it's a one-time need, just to simplify one project. You can also use it in conjunction with VRS curation and further narrow down a virtual report suite for a specific project using this level of curation. So keep these ideas in mind the next time you go to share. Again, curation really helps create a nice, safe space for somebody to work with the data within, and they may not always be as adept with the analytics data and terminology and tools as you are, so this is always a great way to get them up and running quickly. The next pillar of data democratization is sharing. So once you've created a safe project for your end users to consume, you're ready to start sharing your work out. And we offer a few different ways for you to do this within our tools. The first is simply sharing the project so that another business user can see it when they log in. Within WorkSpace, you go to the Share Project menu, and from here you can choose to share it with one or many users. So when they next log in, they'll be able to see the project and start their analysis from it. You can also create a direct project link to the project that you want to share and send that link to somebody. So I like to use this when somebody asks me a business question. I go into analytics, I create a WorkSpace project that answers that question, and I create a link and email that back to them. So they can click the link, they'll be prompted to log in, and they'll land right in WorkSpace with that project pulled up with the answer to their question. So I think this is a really great way to quickly share analysis. You can also share projects by scheduling them. This is the Share Send File on Schedule option. Projects can be delivered as CSVs or PDFs, and they can be sent to one or many people. Scheduling is a great thing to do if you create a project that has rolling date ranges. For example, if a project is looking at last month's data and you want somebody to get that report on the 1st of every month, you can set up a schedule to deliver that file with the latest and greatest data on the 1st. There's all sorts of different granularities too. You can do weekly, daily, whatever you need. So the last method of sharing that I wanted to cover, and probably the most exciting, is the ability to save your projects as custom templates. So if you're not familiar with our templates, to date, Adobe has provided standard templates that have been available to all of our customers for quite some time now. They used to be called starter projects, and they're intended to be a place for you to start your analysis from. We heard a lot of feedback from our customers that while the templates were helpful, they wanted to be able to create their own templates that were meaningful to their business and included their custom KPIs. So in our February release, we introduced custom templates. Now you are able to save a project as a template, and then what that does is when any user in your organization goes to create a new WorkSpace project, they'll now have not only the option to start from a blank project or an Adobe standard template, they'll also be able to see custom templates that you've created for them. So this is a great way, again, to build out the custom KPIs that your business has, build out best practice analysis for your business, and let others use what you've built to start their projects from. So the final pillar of data democratization that we wanted to cover is permissions. Permissions can be applied at the group and the user level, and kind of combinations of both, to give each business user in your organization the right mix of access to Adobe data and tools to ensure that they're successful when using Adobe Analytics. So first I'll cover some of the key group permissions that you can use to be more successful in democratizing your data and our tools. The first is to create user groups under the user management portal within admin to share projects to. So rather than sending a project to single users one at a time, if you know you're going to be sending to a group of people quite often, it's a lot easier to put those users in a group, and then you can choose the group when you share or schedule a project. That ensures that you always remember everybody that needed to receive that file. You can also limit access to data sets at the group level as well. So when you're defining a new group within user management, you can choose which report suites those users are able to see. So rather than letting them see every report suite available in your company, you can pare that down to just the ones that have data for your business, for their business needs. You can also further restrict what they're able to do within those suites by limiting their report access, which can extend to certain tools in Adobe Analytics, as well as components like specific dimensions and events. And then finally, as we mentioned before, you can use virtual report suites to further tailor what it is they're going to have access to. So with the combination of what we described here in virtual suites, you can really get down to the very dimension and metric that you want these groups of users to be able to use. So within report access, there's one permission in particular that I wanted to call out, and that is the Create, Curate Projects in Analysis Workspace permission. This permission allows you to limit the functionality of Workspace and really help somebody kind of crawl, walk, run when it comes to using Analysis Workspace. So if you put somebody in a group that has this unchecked, what they're going to see when they go to Analysis Workspace is a grayed out Create New Project button. If you don't have the Create Curate permission, you'll be able to open projects that have been shared with you and save as if you make any changes to those projects. What you won't be able to do is save over a project that was shared with you or kind of start from scratch. So this is a really good permission or to not give somebody if they're brand new to Analysis Workspace and you want them to just kind of work with the data you've created for them and work more non-destructively by only saving as their projects for themselves. If you check the box to give them Create, Curate permissions, that will enable them to have a little bit more freedom in Workspace. They'll be able to create new projects, so that button will turn blue. They'll be able to save over projects that have been shared with them, and they'll also be able to save as a custom template as well. So this elevates users to have a bit more permission similar to admins in your organization. A couple of user-level permissions we wanted to hit on. The first is expiring logins for temporary contractors. So when you're setting up a specific user, you have the option to make their login valid for a certain time range. This is a great thing to do when you're setting up the username. If you know that it's a person that will work there for maybe 3 months, as soon as the end date hits, they won't be able to log in anymore. None of their work will be lost or any projects that they've created. And if they continue to work with you longer, you can simply go in and extend their login valid date range. So this is just something, a little quick tip when you're setting up temporary contract logins. The last user level permission I wanted to talk about was the ability to disable reports and analytics altogether. So this is actually a permission you can manage at a group level as well. I tend to think it's one that might be best managed by user though. The reason is if you have an existing group of users who are familiar with reports and analytics and use it heavily, you may want to leave their access. But as people get more and more up to speed with Analysis Workspace, it may also be best to kind of remove that old UI so there's no confusion as to which direction your business is heading and where your projects are being created from. It also helps for new users as well if you want to just give them Workspace access and not reports and analytics. This is a great way to do that. That way when they get into our UI, they're not confused as to which place to start getting their questions answered. So we have some pre-built groups for this. On the left, you can see Analysis Workspace Access was added for this particular user. And when that user logs in, the top menu bar, they'll only see WORKSPACE up there. They won't see reports and analytics. So again, it gives them a simpler experience to kind of enter the product with. So let's review the three kind of categories we discussed for data democratization. The first is to curate. Before you share any project out with your end business users, make sure that you narrow down the data set to be more manageable and relatable for your end business users. Don't just give them the keys to Adobe Analytics and all the data you collect. So limit the number of variables, rename them as well. Number two, share out your work once it's been curated to enable others to be more data-driven in their decision-making. And finally, number three, permission users at the group level and the user level. Find the right mix of access that makes sense for each of your users based on their familiarity with Adobe Analytics data and tools. So hope you guys found some of this content helpful, and keep these three pillars in mind the next time you go to share out your work. And with that, I will turn the time over to Mo from National Bank of Canada. He's going to give us some insight into how his organization has been successful with democratizing data using some of the tips that we just discussed.
Thank you, Jan. Hey guys, this is Mo from National Bank of Canada. I've been working at the bank for the past 2 years, and I'm in the analytics field for almost 7 years now. I have had a lot of experience with the other analytics products, but so far I think the Analytics Workspace is the best one I have ever used. So let's get started. So at the bank, so we've been using Adobe Analytics for the past 5 years, and in the beginning we didn't have any workspace or dashboard. So what we did, we populated the report in Excel. Then we will be sending out the report via email using PowerPoint presentation. This wasn't efficient because we didn't have any other choice. We didn't really have any other tools to demonstrate the campaign performance or insights of the for the products. So then we started using the Adobe Workspace, Adobe Dashboard, which is quite similar to Dashboard, quite similar to Workspace, but you don't have a lot of user-friendly interface, or you don't have a lot of flexibility in order to add new dimension or metrics to the reporting. So what we did, we created the dashboard and we'll send it to the business users via emails, and whenever they need to make any modification, they will come back to us and ask us to do the modification, and then we will need to resend the report again. This wasn't quite efficient. So then we have the Adobe Workspace. It's pretty good. We've been using the Workspace for the past 2 years now. So like now Adobe has a functionality to create the templates within the Workspace. We've been actually doing this since last year. So what we did, whenever we have a new product, we will make sure that all the KPIs are standardized across the bank, so that we could build the template and communicate the results across the bank, so that they don't have to come back to us and ask us for ad hoc reports, which would be a lot of time consuming. So now we've been using Workspace. We're pretty happy about it. So let's see at the back how we're using the Workspace. Workspace is being used as a way of communicating the effectiveness of our National Bank's digital campaigns, products, and contents. So like I said, we're creating templates, so we have different product categories. One of the product categories being credit card applications. So what we do, we have a standardized KPIs built for all the credit card application forms, and then we have all the KPIs implemented using Adobe Analytics and DTM, and then we'll be using Adobe Workspace in order to create the templates and share the templates across the business. And then whenever the business users, they need to make any modification to the template, what they would do, they would make a copy of the template and add new dimension or metrics, whatever they need within the template. So currently we only have web data within our Workspace. We're looking into integrate other sources of data, for example, media source data coming from Google or Facebook. So for all of these templates, what we do, we have a segment applied on top of the templates. So it's always campaign based because we communicate because we have a lot of campaigns running, and we want to make sure that people running the campaign, they understand the performance of the campaign, not only on the media portion, also on the web portion. So I think that's where in the past we had a lot of difficulty communicating the results because we didn't have any tools to report on the website performance. So we were using Excel. So now we have the workspace. With using the UTM parameters appended to the URLs of the campaign landing page, we're able to filter out all the data that are coming from the campaign. So for us, in order to make sure that the templates are being used properly, what we did, we standardized the KPIs. So standard product-based KPIs lead to standard template creation. So whenever there's a new product, we sit with the line of business, make sure that they want to track the proper KPIs, and we have the KPIs standardized so that the templates can be created. Once the template is created, we send out the result via emails, or we share it with the different users group. I'll go over in a bit more details at a later point. So if you look at the KPI standardization, I think we focused a lot at the bank to make sure that whenever we build the KPIs, it's all standard, because this is the source of this is the primary information that we ask people. So like whenever they have a new product, that this is the KPI they want to measure. Does it make sense to report on this KPI, or like why do you need this KPI? So we use Adobe Analytics and DTM to standardize all the naming conventions for these KPIs. We also have used the s.products within DTM tool to ensure that all the products are classified within DTM, and all the event variables are being assigned properly for these specific products. So this is our step one. And then once we have the KPI standardized, we go into our workspace and do the configuration for the reporting portions. All of our data are going into a single report suite. For example, we have our transactional website and public content websites. So what we do, we send all the data into the single report suite. Just that for the reporting purposes, it will be so much easier to report on overall performance of our bank. So what we do after that, we use the VRS, Adobe's built-in VRS, to create a specific report suite for each of the sites, so that the different line of businesses, different line of users, when they want to have access to that specific site, so we give them access to it. We also have a user group created based on the level of information they need within our tool. So we also use the Adobe user management in order to create the user group, and then we'll be assigning the permission to that user group. So the dashboard we create within our VRS, it can also be applied to the production report suite, but mostly the users, they want to look at the performance for their line of businesses. So we make sure that the dashboards are created within the VRS and shared for that specific line of businesses. Let's have a quick look at some of the workspace we created using Adobe. So this is just one of the workspace. We don't have. I'm not going to go over with about all the different workspace that we created. So this is just a quick example using the samples data we have within our Adobe Analytics. We have three different views usually within our workspace. The first view being the overall performance of our campaigns or products, which will include all the primary and secondary KPIs that the user want to look at. And the second view is week overview. So we try to compare the performance over last week to see if the performance went up, or if we have to make any action in order to make sure the campaign is performing better. And the second view is usually devices and channels. So the channels is being all the different marketing channels, and device is one of the important reporting for now for us is because we have the National Bank Responsive site we just launched this year, so people want to look at the performance on different devices to make sure that the new site is performing well. So let's quickly look at the overall view of our workspace report. In the overall view, we usually report on overall campaigns or product performance. As you can see, on the top we have key insights where we add all the insight manually. So whenever we have a campaign, we'll add a text into the insight to inform users why there's a lift or why there's a decrease in terms of performance. The way we organized our KPIs are based on primary and secondary KPIs. So primary KPIs is usually, so one of our product is credit card application. So for example, whenever someone clicks on the form and they launch the application, it's a KPI, and then when they submit the application, it's another KPI. So for us, the primary KPI is always how many people completed the application. So we want to report on that. So we group them into primary and secondary KPI. So on the top, as you can see, we have the form launch and form complete. Those are our primary and secondary KPIs. We also look at the conversion rate, which is very important for us in order to understand the performance of the campaigns. So what we do, we use the calculator metric. So we take the unique form launch divided by unique visitors in order to understand the conversion rates of the campaigns. So we always make sure that whenever we build our KPIs, it's always based. It's not going to count every single interaction on the site. So our conversions are built that way. The calculated metrics are very useful when it comes to understand the performance of the campaign. So here we have the form launch rate and form completion rate. So user will be able to understand users coming from different marketing channels, what are the different conversion rates for each of them. We also have unique visitors, bounce rate, and other page views. Those are pretty basic KPIs, but we also consider them as our primary and secondary KPIs in order to ensure that we don't only look at the conversion KPIs, also the website KPIs as well. In the bottom, we have trends. So this enables users to understand the performance overall for the last 2 weeks. This is an example of and then we have a table with all the different products. So here we have the funnel report. So from form launch to form complete. So within all these different steps, how many users did go through these steps, and what are the different drop-off rates for each of these products. Using this information, users would be able to optimize the product page or the form page in order to understand we get the best performance for our products and campaigns. One of our secondary KPIs being the interaction within our landing page. For example, when you have a campaign landing page, you don't only have a link to the application form. You also have other links within the landing page. For example, click to open up a new page, or click to call, stuff like that. So what we did, we were sending all these different information into a custom EVAR, and then looking at the intent for this specific EVAR and make sure that we are tracking all those informations as well. So this is the overall view of our workspace. And if you look at the week over week performance workspace, so here we report on what is the performance compared to the last week. So you could see if it went up or if it went down. And on the top, we report on the we provide insights manually. So we have the text box visualizations, and here we explain what happened within that week and why there's a drop or increase of our campaign. So again, this is just a sample data that we took from our development report suite. So it's not the actual data of our site. The last one we have is devices and channels. So here's it's a quick preview of how all the different marketing channels are performing. If you look at the first graph here is quickly, you can see that 64% of the visits are coming from paid search, but if you look at the conversions, most of the conversions are coming from display. So this is just an example to show how the user could use this data to understand the performance of the marketing channels and where they have to spend the marketing budget on. Instead of just reporting it, giving it in a table, it's better to show it in a visualization because people tend to like this format. So and then in the bottom we have performance by devices. Like I said, we have a new site now for the responsive portion. So we report on all these different devices. We're looking to see if the performance on the mobile side, it went up or it went down. And the last table I have here, it's all the different marketing channels. All the channels are classified within Adobe Analytics. And then here we report on mostly on the conversion rate. So to make sure that all these different marketing channels are performing as we expected. So once we have the dashboards configured, what we do, we send the dashboards via emails. It could be a monthly dashboard or weekly dashboard. We usually use the PDF format. We don't really use the CSV format because we have a lot of graphs and information within within the dashboard, and when you send it out as a CSV, you don't really see the visualization. So I think a PDF is pretty good when you send out as an email. And also we share the templates with different user groups. For example, we have a new partner now. We're working with them on the search campaign, and they want to have access to our data. We wanted to make sure that we give access to the proper data only, not for all the data, since all the data are going into the same master report suite. We don't want to give access to all the data. So we have the transactional website and public website. So the new partners that we're working with, they're going to be working with the public website only. So what we did, we created a specific user group for this external users, and we gave them the access. Also, the templates that are being built within this VRS are being shared with the external partners and internal partners to make sure that whenever they communicate the results for campaigns or products, is standard across the bank. So we don't want them to look at different KPIs or look at different ways of looking at the KPI, because we're the one building the KPI. So we should be the one communicating it. So they're using our template. I cannot say that everybody at the bank is using the template. So the bank is pretty big. So we are slowly getting started. We were presenting our dashboard to different users. So when you define the KPI and when you do the implementation, it's all important, but the most important part is how you communicate the KPIs, because if the users, they don't understand the KPIs and they don't know how to look at the KPIs, it's a bit challenging when it comes to decision making. So what we're doing now at the bank, whenever we build a workspace, we're setting up meetings with different business users to make sure that the whatever KPIs we have within the workspace they have the proper understanding, and these are the KPI that they wanted to report on, so they don't have any other interpretation of the KPIs. So once we share the KPIs, we do the training, and then the users would be able to make the copy of the template and make modifications if needed. So for example, the workspace we built is just to give an overall performance of the products or campaigns. There are a lot of things you could do within the workspace template if you want to dive deep. So you would need to add extra dimension and KPIs to really understand the performance or really understand the insight. So that's why they make a copy of the template, and we actually provide a lot of training to make sure they are able to understand why this is happening and how they could use the template and how they could use it to optimize the campaign. So we're actually slowly getting started at that. So we've been providing a lot of training for that. So for us, there are a lot of benefits to using the workspace. One of the benefits being at the bank, we don't have a lot of data to report on real time. When I say real time, it's not really instant. It takes up to 70 minutes for Adobe to update the data. But this is the best we have at the bank. So when people ask us for data on online activities, we provide data on real time. Then comparing to the offline transactional data, because the transactional data takes few months sometime to report on. So marketing activities, so we're really real time. We're able to report data on real time. So I think this is pretty good. Also, decision making is so much faster. So when you look at the performance in terms of conversions or in terms of visits, the decision making is so much faster for a specific campaign. So you could actually plan your marketing budget once you have your data in Adobe Workspace. Also, the workspace we have, it's pretty interactive and user-friendly. Compared to the dashboards, within Workspace, you're able to drag and drop, add segments, create dashboard, and click to filter out all the other information. So I think it's pretty nice. Also the dashboard, the workspace makes you independent, because you don't have to be dependent on other people to build it for you. It's a tool within Adobe Analytics to create insight and reporting. So I think it's pretty independent. The only problem people have is they don't know the use of Workspace, I think. So that's why he's slowly giving a lot of training to tell them that the Workspace is not that hard to use. It's not that complicated. It's pretty easy. Just that the first step they have to take in order to create these workspace environments. Also, the last benefit I would say is the cost saving. We work with a lot of different agencies, and every question we ask, we get charged. And every campaigns we have, we pay a lot of money to build the workspace. I'm sure they also use the template, and they use apply a segment on top of it to filter out all the other data, and then they send us the report. So I think it's you would be saving a lot of money when you become independent and you started using the workspace. Like any other tools, I think Workspace has its limitation as well. I think that one of the limitations is printable PDF. So when you have different panels, so we have in the example I showed to you, we have overview panel, and then we have devices and channels, and then we have week over week. When you print it in PDF, I think it's pretty hard to read because everything all the data appears on the same page. So I think Adobe is working on a solution to fix this problem. One of the other limitation, I believe, it's the merging data from different report suite. If you want to look at the performance on an applications, mobile app, and or on the web together, it's pretty hard to put them together into the same report. I know that we have a report builder on Excel that we could use to populate this data, but it's also report builder. It's a bit slower than Workspace when you run the query. So I think to report on overall performance, there's something missing there. So for example, we have a product credit card application within the application mobile, and on the website. So when you want to merge them together, we will need to go back to Excel in the old way and put them together and report them. I think that's something definitely could something be improved. And the other one I would say is the conversion funnel visualization. Into the Adobe Workspace, Adobe Dashboard, we have an option to report using the product conversion funnel, but into the Adobe Workspace, I don't really see any option to report on the conversion funnel visualization. I think it's very important for our products. It could be for financial or e-commerce. There's a lot of steps between the completion of conversions and starting the conversion. So I think it's very important to report on that. So I think that could be improved as well. The last one I would say it's automated insights. We've been adding the insight manually into the workspace environments, but I think it'd be better if there's a way for Adobe to identify the insights dynamically. For example, if there's a lift coming from a specific campaign, I think it would be better if Adobe could automatically detect, okay, because of the performance from these channels, we are getting a better conversion, stuff like that. It could automatically add. I think that would definitely help a lot. But again, there's always up and down with any other tools. But we have used so many other tools in the past. And out of all these, I think Adobe Workspace, it works so much better, and it's very helpful for any business users. With that, I'm passing it to Jen, and she's going to take over the questions. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to respond.
Thanks so much, Mo. Yeah, I think it's really cool how you guys have created a dashboard and a single project and scaled that to many different teams and campaign owners by allowing them to create their own segments and apply that on top of the same project. It seems like it's helped to kind of define the right analysis that needs to be done for a campaign while still giving them the flexibility to analyze the campaign that is most meaningful to them. So really cool to see you guys using Workspace and the flexibility of it extending out to your business users. So with that, we do have some time to answer some questions. I've been responding in a Q&A pod. I'm going to read out a few that have come up quite a bit and the answers to those. And then, Mo, there's a couple assigned to you. So I'll turn it over to you in a few minutes to answer some of those. So keep the questions coming. We'll try to field as many as we can. And then towards the end of the session, we will pull up an exit poll. At that point, the Q&A pod will go away, and we'd really appreciate your feedback to make sure that we can continually improve on the webinars in the future. So one question that came up quite a bit in the chat pod is around that create, curate permission. So as I mentioned, if you give that permission to a user, it allows them to save over projects that have been shared with you. if you aren't seeing that behavior, I'd appreciate if you could log a ticket with our customer care team, because that should be how it's working. And if you're not seeing that behavior, we want to make sure we fix that. Additionally, though, some of you are asking if there's ways to not let people affect your shared projects, even if they have that permission turned on. So this is something we've heard quite a bit and something we're currently researching. We'd like to introduce more permission controls into WorkSpace, specifically editor versus viewer controls. Viewer would be something like read-only, where they would get a dashboard and they could interact with a few elements of it, but not save over it or make any other changes, whereas editor would have more enhanced control. So in addition to admins and then people that just kind of receive PDFs, we want to bring in a bit more of a spectrum of access control there. So that's something that we're working on. There was another question about when you share a project and you have a bunch of segments and calculated metrics created in it, you want to make sure your end business users have access to those as well. Right before you share your project in that share modal, there's a little checkbox towards the bottom. And actually, let me see if I can hop back in my presentation here to the right screen. Yeah, so it might be a little small, but this top checkbox here says automatically share embedded components with recipients. So if you check that box, anybody that's on this share line at this time when you share the project will also have all the segments and calculated metrics shared with them as well. So that's an important one to check if you want to make sure they can get to all those other components. They'll still be able to view them in the project, but they won't be able to open them and inspect them and edit them. You'll notice this other box here as well, set landing page for recipients. If you know that these end business users would find this project very helpful and perhaps want to see it every time they log in, you can check that box. But just beware that that changes their landing page from RNA or WorkSpace to this particular project. There were some other questions around some ways to pull data out of Adobe Analytics. The first is by downloading a PDF. Today we don't offer page breaks on the PDF. We intended for it to be just a digital document, but we have heard quite a bit of feedback around wanting to be able to digitally index the document or print it. So PDF pagination is something that we are also researching for this year. There was questions around if you can download the data to Excel. The first as an Excel format. That's something we have on our backlog, but not something we're focused on for this year. Instead, we're working on the pagination, as I mentioned, and enhancing some of those permissions. But there are ways to get data out to Excel. You can download the project as a CSV. It won't come out with any of the visualizations, but it will be all the underlying data tables. Or you can highlight a freeform table and hit Control-C, which has had sporadic success this year, but we recently think that we fixed it completely. So try that. And if that doesn't work, we also added a right-click copy to clipboard option that will always, without fail, get your data copied so that you can paste it into Excel. So those are a couple things that you can, a couple ways that you can get that data out. There was another question around data feeds as a way to export virtual report suite data. So today, virtual report suites are not supported in data feeds. Data feeds is a collection of all the hits that you've sent us. So if you need to kind of reapply the virtual report suite logic, that today has to be done on your side before you further distribute the data feeds out. There was a question at the very top. I didn't forget about you, Brent. It's a very good question. You were asking how Adobe recommends using Power BI integrations versus Analysis Workspace. This is a very long conversation that we can have about it, but I think the briefest way I can put it is Power BI is a great place to build higher level executive dashboards that bring together data from all different types of data sources, not just Adobe Analytics. So if you have a need to combine data from many different sources at a higher level for executives to consume, I think Power BI is a great place to do that. We've built integrations with Report Builder so you can publish your projects there, and we'll also be launching soon the ability to query custom data in Power BI from Adobe Analytics. So we're very much focused on tightening our partnership with them. But I think the Power BI is used for higher level data sharing and across different types of data, not just Adobe Analytics. Whereas WORKSPACE, I think, is meant more for really deep diving into Adobe Analytics data and any data that you've integrated with us. It's a great place to explore and analyze and really dig for those insights. And then also has a nice presentation layer as well for sharing out those insights with executives and other business users in your organization. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of clarity on kind of which tool to use when. I think both serve very important purposes, and we're investing in both solutions moving forward. So I'll take a break for just a second, and Mo, if there's any questions that were posed to you that you think might be worth calling out, I'll let you kind of take the floor for just a minute.
Yep, thanks, Jen. So one of the questions Brett asked is how we dealing with Adobe and Power BI. One of the projects that the bank is currently working on is trying to centralize all the data into our Data Hub platform. So the bank is transforming into data centralized. So we're looking into how we could integrate the web data, media data, and the transactional data into our Data Hub platform. I'm working with the BI team to use the Adobe data feed and send the data into Data Hub. So then once the data is in our Data Hub, we'll be using Power BI in order to extract the information. So I think it's a pretty good way to start off connecting all the data together, because we have a way to connect our online and offline data. The second question we have is how many dashboards we have currently in place, and how do we decide to set up a new one. So bank is pretty big. We work with the different users and different line of businesses. We have quite a bit of dashboard. Like I said, we slowly educating the users on how we could use the workspace and how they could interpret the result. So there's quite a bit of the workspace, to be honest, and we're trying to centralize everything and create something standardized so that everybody could speak the same language. It's usually one or two workspace per line of businesses. Whenever we have a new request, we usually share the same workspace that we created for the other projects, and we'll ask them for the feedback. And whenever if they want to make changes to that, then they'll come back to us, and we'll make the modification within the existing dashboard we have. I think that's pretty much the questions I have.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Mo. So I posted a couple resources in the Q&A pod around Power BI. We have content packs in Power BI. Those are basically like standard templates. We offer publishing Report Builder to Power BI. I posted a link about that. And then the third integration, as I mentioned, will be coming. Let me just quickly see if there's any others that I can touch on. Yeah, okay. I'll spend some time to reply to these. I might need a minute or two. So if we could leave the Q&A pod up before we switch over to the exit poll, we'll try to get to as many of these as we can. And then please fill out the survey at the end and let us know your feedback. Keep an eye out for our release that's happening today. We will be announcing things like text wrapping on your column headers, and also the ability to quickly create calculated metrics in WORKSPACE. So there's a lot of really exciting things, and I hope you guys get a lot of use out of them. Thanks so much for everybody's time today.